It's 11:35. Good morning. It is 5 Live. The Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, has given a wide-ranging speech on civil liberties this morning. In it, he said the government wanted to restore the balance of liberty and security in the battle against terrorism. He talked about control orders. They were introduced in 2005 under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and they restrict the movement of the recipient and keep a close watch on what information they have access to and who they talk to. Mr Clegg said they were disproportionate in form and had been ineffective in use.
Remember how they originally came about? As an ad hoc and rushed response to a number of court rulings, the creation of virtual house arrest for people who could not be tried in court, a departure from our long-held commitment to open justice. And what is worse, as the Prime Minister pointed out earlier in the week, they didn't even work properly. John Reid himself described them as full of holes. Suspects have absconded. They were repeatedly and successfully challenged in the courts. And the long-running arguments around control orders have distracted from the real objectives.
He also hinted at some changes as to how they might work in the future. Details will be announced by the Home Secretary at a later date.
I don't think it is justifiable to impose what is virtual house arrest without having been able to charge or convict someone first. That, I think, is very clear, and it's one of the flaws in the current system that we're seeking to address.
Let's talk to Alex Deane, a barrister and a director of Big Brother Watch. Just explain what the motivation of your organisation is, Alex.
Sure, Victoria. We are a campaigning organisation that fights to protect privacy and personal liberty.
OK. Do you have a view on what should be done with control orders and what they should be replaced with, or how they should be tweaked?
I do. I think control orders are immoral. I'm old-fashioned enough to believe that we should have the presumption of innocence in this country, and that you're presumed innocent until you're proven guilty, and that you should have a trial that carries out that process of deciding whether or not you're guilty. Instead, we've got this perpetual house arrest system instituted by the last government, but I'm afraid still continued for the moment by this one, under which every time these cases go to court, the government loses. I take no comfort, I'm afraid, for the moment from the speech that we got from the Deputy Prime Minister today. I regard it, frankly, as a bit of a waste of time. Victoria, I did go and I was sitting in the audience for it. I know it was his birthday today and all that. Happy birthday, Mr Clegg. But it was the government equivalent of the boy who cried wolf. He basically said nothing specific about what this government's going to do, and it's 7 months in. They made promises before the election to get rid of control orders.
If we're to believe what we read, there is a battle going on between some senior Conservatives and some senior Lib Dems about what to do with these control orders, and perhaps in power Nick Clegg is coming round to the view that it's all right to oppose these things in opposition when you're in power and you look at the information presented to you about these terrorist suspects. Much more difficult to simply let them go.
Well, I think it's a farcical case that gets made for control orders even on that basis, because the Home Office tells us there are some 4,000 terrorists active in this country. We can't tell you who they are, but we know they're out there. And they wind up with dozens of people on control orders at best. So even on the government's case, they're not answering the dangers that we supposedly face from terrorism. But Victoria, the point I'm trying to make is that this was effectively exactly the same speech you might remember Nick Clegg gave soon after the coalition was formed. You can't disagree with any of it. The mood music is superb, but it's profoundly depressing to anyone who believes in freedom to find 7 months on that there's still nothing but the mood music.
Do you accept any of the arguments about why these suspects can't be tried? Because it's incredibly sensitive information and may put our members of the intelligence services at risk.
No, I don't. I'm afraid that that is, I think, a farcical argument from the government. We have, for a long time in this country, had provisions from which you can exclude members of the press or indeed members of the public from a court procedure. That may be imperfect, but it's better than keeping someone locked up in their house indefinitely, which is what control orders are. The point I'd make, Victoria, is that there are two alternatives that this government can pursue that the last government rather rather liked. The first one was covert surveillance, which is at least monitored and authorised by a senior officer and can be authorised by a judge or even a minister. So instead of keeping someone locked up in their house, you could have a reviewable process whereby you said to these people, you are suspected of this, and from time to time we're going to check up on you. Now that is deeply Orwellian, but it's clearly better than keeping someone locked up in their house all the time. And the second option that they should explore is using intercept evidence in court, which again may be imperfect because GCHQ thinks that that's going to let terrorists know they're being watched, as if terrorists don't know that already. But it would mean that you could use strong evidence that we already have against supposed terrorists.
Do you understand why these suspects are not told what the evidence is against them?
I think the problem that control orders offer isn't just that they don't get told what the evidence is against them. They don't get told the nature of the allegations. There is simply no way in which you can defend yourself when you're not told what you're suspected of doing. So I can understand a situation in which you might withhold from, let's say I'm an accused terrorist, Victoria. You don't tell me, but you tell my barrister, or you tell a special barrister appointed by the court what the nature of X, Y or Z evidence is. Again, imperfect, but a proper judicial and legal process. Here, nobody, no legal team, no special counsel, even gets told the nature of the allegations facing an individual. So if they say Victoria Derbyshire is suspected of this offence, you've got no recourse, Victoria, at all to try and defend yourself. That's it. You're on a control order. That can't be right, can it?
You think they should simply sweep them away and let these people go?
No, I think that they should either try people or release them into the public, or indeed let them leave the country. The point that I would make, Victoria, is that you should have a trial process at which someone is found innocent or guilty. We are not at war with any nation. These people aren't being imprisoned under the auspices of the Geneva Convention. If they are criminals, try them as criminals, and if they're not criminals, then let them go.
OK. Thank you for talking to us. That's Alex Deane. He's the director of Big Brother Watch and also happens to be a barrister. It's 5 Live. It's 11:42. Let's talk.